You are now watching Man's Dark Nature, where true crime meets the truth behind the silence. Here, we explore unsolved murders, recently reopened cold cases, and twisted domestic crimes that continue to haunt families and investigators alike. No jump scares, no sensationalism, just the dark, unsettling facts that the world tried to forget, delivered through careful research and unflinching investigation. This is where forgotten cases find their voice, and where the darkness reveals its secrets. December 16, 2000. Started like any other Saturday morning in Tallahassee, Florida. Mike Williams, a 31-year-old real estate appraiser with an infectious smile and a passion for duck hunting, kissed his wife Denise goodbye and headed out to Lake Seminole for what should have been a routine hunting trip. He never came home. What followed was an 18-year web of lies, manipulation, and cold-blooded murder that would shock even seasoned investigators, orchestrated by the one person who was supposed to love him most. This isn't just another case of spousal murder. This is the story of how a seemingly devoted wife spent years planning the perfect crime, using her husband's best friend as both lover and executioner, all while playing the grieving widow to perfection. It's a tale that proves sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't hiding in the shadows. She's sleeping next to you every night. To understand how Denise Williams pulled off what she thought was the perfect murder, you have to go back to the relationships that made it possible. Mike Williams and Brian Winchester had been best friends since childhood, the kind of friendship forged in Little League and strengthened through decades of shared adventures. They hunted together, worked together, and trusted each other with their lives. That trust would prove fatal for Mike. Brian Winchester wasn't just Mike's best friend, he was also his insurance agent. In a move that would later seem chillingly calculated, Winchester sold Mike a $1.75 million life insurance policy just 6 months before his disappearance. But the real poison in this friendship came in the form of Denise Williams, Mike's wife of 6 years, who had been carrying on a secret affair with Winchester behind her husband's back. The affair wasn't just about passion, it was about greed. Denise had grown tired of her middle-class life with Mike, despite his steady income and devotion to their family. She wanted more, and Winchester, with his insurance business and willingness to do anything for her love, represented the perfect opportunity to upgrade her lifestyle permanently. What makes this case particularly chilling is how long the conspiracy developed. This wasn't a crime of passion or a spur-of-the-moment decision. Evidence would later show that Denise and Winchester had been planning Mike's murder for months, maybe even years, carefully timing the purchase of the life insurance policy and waiting for the perfect opportunity to execute their plan. December 16, 2000, was the day Denise Williams and Brian Winchester chose to cash in on their deadly investment. Mike Williams left home that morning excited about duck hunting at Lake Seminole, a sprawling body of water on the Florida-Georgia border known for its excellent waterfowl hunting. He had no idea he was walking into an execution. According to the plan Denise and Winchester had crafted, Winchester would meet Mike at the lake, ostensibly for a hunting trip together. But instead of hunting ducks, Winchester had come to hunt his best friend. In a betrayal that defies comprehension, Winchester shot Mike Williams in the head and then disposed of his body in the lake's alligator-infested waters. The location was chosen specifically for its ability to destroy evidence. Lake Seminole's alligator population would ensure that Mike's body would never be found intact, if it was found at all. Winchester and Denise believed that without a body, there could be no murder investigation, just a tragic hunting accident that would pay out millions in insurance money. But the plan had a flaw that would eventually unravel their entire conspiracy. They underestimated Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, and her unshakable belief that her son hadn't simply drowned in a hunting accident. What followed Mike Williams' disappearance was a masterclass in manipulation and deception that lasted nearly 2 decades. Denise Williams didn't just play the role of grieving widow, she perfected it. She attended vigils, spoke to reporters with tears in her eyes, and even helped search for her husband's body, all while knowing exactly where he was and who had put him there. The performance was so convincing that it fooled investigators, insurance companies, and even Mike's own family for years. Denise collected on Mike's life insurance policies, eventually receiving $1.5 million in benefits, while Winchester calculated that she would receive $2.25 million in total benefits from Mike's death. She used this blood money to maintain her lifestyle and eventually marry the man who had murdered her first husband. In 2005, 5 years after Mike's disappearance, Denise married Brian Winchester in what must rank as one of the most grotesque wedding ceremonies in criminal history. The bride and groom exchanged vows knowing they were bound together not just by love, but by murder. They had literally gotten away with the perfect crime, or so they thought. But even as Denise and Winchester enjoyed their new life together, built on Mike Williams' grave, cracks were beginning to show in their relationship. The stress of maintaining such an enormous lie, combined with the paranoia that comes with knowing you've committed murder, began to take its toll on their marriage. While Denise Williams was collecting insurance money and playing the grieving widow, Mike Williams' mother, Cheryl Williams, was waging a one-woman war against the official narrative of her son's disappearance. From day one, Cheryl refused to believe that her experienced hunter son had simply drowned in an accident. She knew Mike too well. He was an expert outdoorsman who understood water safety and would never have made the kind of mistakes that supposedly led to his death. For 18 years, Cheryl Williams fought tirelessly to keep her son's case alive. She hired private investigators, pressured law enforcement agencies, and refused to let the media forget about Mike's disappearance. She endured the frustration of watching Denise collect insurance money while living with the man she suspected had killed her son. But Cheryl Williams had something that Denise and Winchester didn't count on: a mother's love and an unbreakable determination to find the truth. Cheryl's persistence eventually paid off when she connected with Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigators who were willing to take a fresh look at the case. These investigators began to see the same inconsistencies and red flags that had bothered Cheryl for years. They noticed how quickly Denise had moved on from her husband's disappearance, how convenient the timing of the insurance policy had been, and how Winchester seemed to benefit professionally and personally from Mike's death. The investigation gained momentum when investigators began to focus on the relationship between Denise and Winchester. Phone records, financial documents, and witness statements began to paint a picture of a conspiracy that had been years in the making. The beginning of the end for Denise Williams came from an unexpected source: her co-conspirator and second husband, Brian Winchester. By 2016, the Williams-Winchester marriage was falling apart, destroyed by the same greed and selfishness that had motivated the original murder. Winchester had become increasingly paranoid and unstable, behavior that culminated in a bizarre kidnapping incident in 2016 when he abducted Denise at gunpoint. This incident, which seemed unrelated to Mike Williams' disappearance, actually provided investigators with the breakthrough they needed. When Winchester was arrested for the kidnapping, he found himself facing serious prison time. Suddenly, the man who had helped Denise commit the perfect murder found himself in a position where he had everything to gain by telling the truth and nothing to lose by betraying his former partner in crime. In 2017, Winchester made the decision that would finally bring justice for Mike Williams. He confessed to killing his former best friend and implicated Denise as the mastermind behind the murder plot. Winchester's confession provided investigators with the details they needed to understand exactly how the murder had been planned and executed. According to Winchester's confession, he had shot Mike Williams in the head during what Mike thought was a hunting trip. Winchester then disposed of the body in Lake Seminole, believing it would never be found. The confession also revealed that Denise had been the driving force behind the murder plot, motivated by greed and her desire to cash in on Mike's life insurance policies. Winchester's confession not only provided the motive and method for Mike Williams' murder, it also led investigators to his remains. In December 2017, exactly 17 years after his disappearance, Mike Williams' body was finally recovered from Lake Seminole. The discovery of Mike's remains was both a triumph and a tragedy for his family. For Cheryl Williams, it vindicated her 17-year fight to prove that her son hadn't simply drowned in an accident. But it also confirmed her worst fears about what had really happened to Mike and who was responsible for his death. The recovery of Mike's body provided crucial evidence for the prosecution. Medical examiners were able to determine that Mike had died from a gunshot wound to the head, confirming Winchester's confession and disproving the accidental drowning theory that Denise and Winchester had maintained for years. In December 2018, Denise Williams finally faced trial for her husband's murder. The trial was a media sensation, drawing national attention to a case that had all the elements of a perfect true crime story: murder, betrayal, insurance fraud, and a grieving mother's fight for justice. The prosecution presented a compelling case that painted Denise as the mastermind behind an elaborate murder plot motivated by greed and adultery. They showed how she had manipulated Winchester into killing Mike, how she had collected millions in insurance benefits, and how she had maintained an 18-year charade while living off the proceeds of her husband's murder. The defense tried to portray Denise as another victim of Winchester's manipulation, claiming that she had been coerced into the affair and had no knowledge of Winchester's plan to kill Mike. But the evidence against her was overwhelming, and the jury wasn't buying her victim act. Winchester, who had already pleaded guilty to Mike's murder in exchange for his cooperation, testified against his former wife and co-conspirator. His testimony provided jurors with a detailed account of how the murder had been planned and executed, leaving little doubt about Denise's role in her husband's death. On December 14, 2018, after deliberating for just a few hours, the jury found Denise Williams guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and accessory after the fact. The verdict came almost exactly 18 years after Mike Williams' disappearance, finally bringing justice to a case that had consumed investigators and Mike's family for nearly 2 decades. The following February, Denise Williams was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for her role in orchestrating her husband's murder. The judge who sentenced her noted the particularly heinous nature of her crimes, pointing out that she had not only murdered her husband but had spent 18 years lying about it while collecting insurance money and living with his killer. For Cheryl Williams, the verdict was the culmination of an 18-year fight for justice. She had never given up on finding the truth about her son's disappearance, even when law enforcement agencies seemed ready to close the case and move on. Her persistence had finally paid off, ensuring that the people responsible for Mike's murder would face consequences for their actions. While the $2.25 million in insurance benefits certainly provided a powerful motive for Mike Williams' murder, the case reveals deeper psychological factors that drove Denise Williams to orchestrate her husband's death. This wasn't just about money, it was about a woman who felt entitled to a better life and was willing to kill to get it. Denise Williams represented a particular type of criminal that law enforcement experts call a black widow, a woman who kills intimate partners for financial gain. These criminals are often characterized by their ability to maintain normal facades while planning and executing elaborate murder plots. They're skilled manipulators who can convince others to do their dirty work while maintaining plausible deniability. What makes the Denise Williams case particularly chilling is the length of time she spent planning and executing her scheme. This wasn't a crime of passion or a spur-of-the-moment decision. Evidence suggests that she spent years cultivating her affair with Winchester, timing the purchase of Mike's life insurance policy, and planning the perfect opportunity to eliminate her husband. The case also reveals the dangerous dynamics that can develop when adultery, greed, and manipulation combine. Winchester wasn't just Denise's lover, he was her weapon, a man so infatuated with her that he was willing to commit murder on her behalf. Denise understood Winchester's weaknesses and exploited them to convince him to kill his own best friend. Perhaps even more disturbing than the murder itself was the 18-year cover-up that followed. Denise Williams didn't just kill her husband, she spent nearly 2 decades lying about it, collecting insurance money, and even marrying his killer. The scope and duration of her deception reveal a level of callousness that's hard to comprehend. During those 18 years, Denise Williams maintained the facade of a grieving widow while secretly living off the proceeds of her husband's murder. She attended memorial services, spoke to reporters about her loss, and even helped search for Mike's body, all while knowing exactly where he was and who had put him there. The psychological toll of maintaining such an elaborate lie for so long would have been enormous for most people, but Denise Williams seemed to thrive on the deception. She was able to compartmentalize her guilt and continue living normally, even starting a new family with Winchester while using money that came from her first husband's death. This ability to maintain normal relationships and social functions while harboring such dark secrets is characteristic of psychopathic behavior. Criminal psychologists who have studied the case note that Denise Williams displayed many of the traits associated with psychopathy, including a lack of empathy, an inflated sense of self-worth, and an ability to manipulate others for personal gain. The Mike Williams case provides valuable insights into how cold cases are eventually solved and why some investigations succeed where others fail. The key factors that led to the case being solved include persistent family members, dedicated investigators, and advances in forensic technology. Cheryl Williams' refusal to accept the official explanation of her son's disappearance was crucial to keeping the case alive. Without her constant pressure on law enforcement agencies and her willingness to hire private investigators, the case might have been permanently closed as an accidental drowning. The case also benefited from investigators who were willing to take a fresh look at old evidence and ask new questions about the circumstances of Mike's disappearance. These investigators were able to see patterns and connections that had been missed in the original investigation, leading them to focus on Denise and Winchester as potential suspects. Finally, the case was solved when Winchester's own criminal behavior led to his arrest and eventual confession. This highlights how criminal conspiracies often unravel due to the criminal's own actions rather than brilliant detective work. While Mike Williams was the primary victim of Denise Williams' murderous scheme, he wasn't the only one hurt by her actions. The case created multiple victims whose lives were forever changed by Denise's greed and selfishness. Cheryl Williams spent 18 years of her life fighting for justice for her son, years that should have been spent grieving and healing. Instead, she was forced to endure the frustration of watching her son's killer collect insurance money while living free. The emotional toll of this fight on Cheryl and the rest of Mike's family cannot be overstated. Mike and Denise's daughter, who was just 18 months old when her father disappeared, grew up without knowing her father and believing he had died in an accident. When she learned the truth about her mother's role in her father's murder, she was forced to confront the fact that the woman who raised her was also the woman who had orchestrated her father's death. Brian Winchester, despite his role as co-conspirator, was also a victim of Denise's manipulation. While this doesn't excuse his actions, it's clear that Denise exploited Winchester's infatuation with her to convince him to commit murder. Winchester's life was destroyed by his involvement in the crime, and he will likely spend the rest of his life in prison. The Mike Williams case highlights a disturbing aspect of many spousal murders: the role that life insurance policies play in providing both motive and funding for these crimes. Insurance fraud experts estimate that a significant percentage of life insurance claims involve some form of fraud or criminal activity. In the Williams case, the timing of Mike's life insurance policy purchase was particularly suspicious. The fact that Winchester, as Mike's insurance agent, sold him a $1.75 million policy just 6 months before his disappearance should have been a red flag for investigators and insurance companies. The case raises questions about how life insurance companies investigate claims and whether they do enough to identify potentially fraudulent policies. While insurance companies eventually paid out on Mike's policies, they could have potentially prevented the murder by conducting more thorough investigations into the circumstances surrounding the policy purchases. The Williams case also demonstrates how life insurance can become a murder weapon in the wrong hands. For criminals like Denise Williams, a spouse's life insurance policy isn't protection for the family, it's an incentive for murder. Denise Williams fits the profile of what criminal psychologists call a black widow killer, a woman who murders intimate partners for financial gain. These criminals share certain characteristics that make them particularly dangerous and difficult to identify. Black widow killers are typically highly manipulative individuals who are skilled at presenting themselves as loving, caring partners while secretly planning their victims' deaths. They often choose vulnerable targets, men who are isolated from family and friends or who have significant financial assets that the killer wants to inherit. What makes black widow killers particularly dangerous is their ability to maintain normal relationships and social functions while harboring murderous intentions. They can be loving mothers, devoted daughters, and active community members, all while planning their next victim's death. Denise Williams displayed many of these characteristics. She was able to maintain the facade of a loving wife while carrying on an affair and planning Mike's murder. After the murder, she successfully played the role of grieving widow for 18 years, fooling investigators, insurance companies, and even some members of Mike's family. The case also reveals how black widow killers often recruit accomplices to carry out their murders. Rather than getting their hands dirty themselves, they manipulate others into committing murder on their behalf. This provides them with plausible deniability and makes it harder for investigators to prove their involvement in the crime. The Mike Williams case provides valuable lessons about the warning signs that might indicate someone is planning to harm their spouse. While it's impossible to predict with certainty who might become violent, there are certain red flags that friends and family members should watch for. The timing of life insurance policy purchases can be a warning sign, particularly if a spouse suddenly wants to increase coverage or purchase new policies. In the Williams case, the fact that Mike purchased a large life insurance policy just months before his disappearance should have been investigated more thoroughly. Extramarital affairs, while not necessarily predictive of violence, can create dangerous situations when combined with financial motives. The combination of adultery and significant financial gain from a spouse's death creates a particularly toxic situation that can lead to murder. Changes in behavior or personality can also be warning signs. While Denise Williams was apparently skilled at maintaining her facade, people planning murder often display subtle changes in their behavior that might be noticed by observant friends or family members. The conviction of Denise Williams for her husband's murder represents more than just the resolution of a cold case. It's a testament to the power of persistence and the importance of never giving up on seeking justice for victims of violent crime. For 18 years, it seemed like Denise Williams had committed the perfect crime. She had eliminated her husband, collected millions in insurance money, married his killer, and successfully convinced law enforcement that Mike had died in an accident. She had every reason to believe she would never face consequences for her actions. But Denise Williams underestimated the power of a mother's love and the determination of investigators who refused to accept easy answers to complex questions. Cheryl Williams' 18-year fight for justice proved that even the most carefully planned crimes can eventually be solved when dedicated people refuse to give up. The case also demonstrates that advances in investigative techniques and changes in law enforcement priorities can breathe new life into cold cases. The investigators who eventually solved Mike Williams' murder were able to see evidence and connections that had been missed by earlier investigators, proving that it's never too late to seek justice for victims of violent crime. For true crime enthusiasts, the Denise Williams case represents the perfect storm of elements that make for compelling storytelling: murder, betrayal, greed, manipulation, and ultimately, justice. It's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous criminals are hiding in plain sight, wearing the masks of loving spouses and grieving widows while harboring the darkest of intentions. The case serves as a warning about the dangers of trusting too completely and the importance of paying attention to red flags in relationships. It also provides hope that even when justice is delayed, it doesn't have to be denied, as long as there are people willing to fight for the truth. In the end, Denise Williams' web of lies and deception couldn't withstand the persistent pursuit of justice by those who loved Mike Williams and refused to let his murder go unpunished. Her conviction ensures that she will spend the rest of her life paying for her crimes, while Mike Williams' memory is honored by the knowledge that his killer finally faced justice. The Black Widow thought she had spun the perfect web, but in the end, she became trapped in it herself. The darkness reveals its secrets slowly, but it always reveals them. If this story found you in the shadows, subscribe and let me know in the comments. What truth do you think we missed? Until the next case goes cold, stay vigilant.